Welcome to the 2020 Georgia Election Fraud Report, brought to you by David Cross, Kevin Moncla, and Norel Brigden. In this report, we're going to cover a myriad of issues. This is not all inclusive, but it is the most salient points that we found in the state of Georgia. In this report, we will show you key mistakes and errors in the Georgia election that were never investigated or uncovered by the Secretary of State's office. None of the election data that was input by Georgia election officials at the county level or the Secretary of State's level were ever proofed or verified to be accurate. The evidence you're about to see will show Georgia's 2020 election should never have been certified. Everything in this report is available via open records requests. The purpose of this report is to help enlist your help financially or as a volunteer to help the citizens of Georgia see the paper ballots, to compare them to what we believe are fraudulent election results. However, our efforts are being blocked by Secretary Raffensperger's office in every single county. Nobody will ever see the ballots without your help. The next person to see any paper ballots in Georgia will be the people who shred them. And if nobody will ever see the ballots, what is the point of keeping them sealed? Key action items to take away from. The Republican Party on a national level has used President Trump to raise hundreds of millions of dollars. Last I heard, about $400 million. To date, we have received zero assistance from the National Party and $100 from the state party president in Georgia. We will raise $300,000 to force Georgia counties to compare their digital results to the paper ballots. We will show the errors. They are a feature of the system. Career politicians will discourage you from giving to our efforts. They are part of the problem. Will you be remembered for your contribution or forgotten for helping keep the politicrats in power? Please consider making a tax-deductible donation to the nonpartisan group voterga.org. How are we being blocked by the Secretary of State? Basically, counties across the state are telling us that we cannot see the ballots based upon flawed logic. The Secretary of State's office, through Ryan Germany, has instructed each county to refuse our lawful open records request with the statement below. We're being told, please be advised that only images of ballots created by a voting system are subject to the Open Records Act. Ballots are sealed records pursuant to OCGA 21-2-500 and other Georgia statutes. Georgia courts have upheld the fact for those sealed materials, including ballots which are statutorily designed to be kept under seal, it is by law prohibited or specifically exempted from being opened to inspection by the general public, and therefore is not an open record subject to disclosure. And he cites Smith versus DeKalb County, which is a bullshit case that has nothing to do with any of this. Every single county has denied our request for fresh copies of the ballots. They will only provide images that are created by Dominion. The irony here is that the original intent of the new voting system was to be able to provide an audit trail using paper ballots. You can see in the yellow the yellow highlights on here that the Dominion sales collateral said that they also create an auditable paper trail with other enhanced review capabilities for the public. For example, on the bottom right, the state can make scanned images of all ballots cast in statewide elections available, allowing anyone to do a ballot count to check the accuracy of results. So this system was picked out after a brief 2-week review process where Brian Kemp agreed to purchase the new voting system from his former chief of staff, who became a lobbyist for Dominion. I suspect he probably got a pretty hefty commission, the ex-chief of staff. The marketing material that I just read from Dominion clearly indicates the intent of the system was that elections be verified by reviewing paper ballots. The Secretary of State thought so much of Dominion's marketing collateral that he literally copied and pasted it to his own documents that were then used to calm the fears of critics. He has since modified this document and gotten rid of the yellow highlights, which again you can see. It talks about using paper ballots in order to be able to audit things. In the bottom right-hand corner, for example, the state can make scanned images of all ballots cast in statewide elections available, allowing anyone to do a ballot count to check the accuracy of results. That's exactly the same wording from the previous slide. Here we are with the November 3rd, 2020 initial count problems and errors. Raffensperger did something that the expert called a Franken count. And he told everyone that he just wanted to be, totally straightforward and honest and transparent, and wanted to be able to just do a full hand recount. And that's not entirely correct. He had to do a full hand recount because Georgia counties deleted 1,700,000 ballot images. We have performed open records requests on all 159 counties, and that is exactly what we found. 1.7 million missing ballots. This is a slide provided by Voter GA that reinforces what you just looked at. 74 counties could not produce original ballot images for the 2020 election. So how in the hell are you supposed to audit an election if they won't provide you the paper ballots and they don't have the ballot images? 48% of the counties destroyed ballot images or refused to comply. 6 admitted having none at all. 22 admitted to having no original, only the recount images. And 28 admitted to only having partial original images. Some mail-in, some in-person, and shortages in the originals. You were told that the votes were counted 3 times and that everything came out really, really close. And that is a lie. Evidence suggests that Raffensperger counted 300,000 too many votes statewide. We're going to watch a Today Show clip in just a second. November 4th, Brad Raffensperger went on to the Today Show in the morning, and he told them that there were 4.7 million votes that were cast. On the next slide, I'll show you the video, and you need to pay close attention to the numbers that he's using, 4.7 million, and then as soon as he gets the numbers out, the video feed is inexplicably pulled. The plug is pulled. All right, let's see if this thing will play properly.
Get back to our election coverage and another check of the electoral map. Check those 9 states out in gray. Still at this hour, undecided. The presidential race hanging in the balance. They're counting ballots as we speak.
That's right. And one of the states that's a squeaker, a state that Joe Biden had high hopes late in the game of flipping this election, but we shall see, is Georgia. And that state's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, is with us now. Mr. Secretary, good morning on a busy morning. I guess the big question is, Hoda?
Yeah, we want to know, when are we going to get your votes? When are we going to find out who's won your state?
Well, we have about 2% left to go. We had great success yesterday. We had 4.7 million voters that voted. Record breaker for us, beats the 4.1 in 2016. We also had average wait time of only 2 minutes, statewide average. We have about 2% left to go. And you can see where we are right now with the results that have been reported. I don't think it'll change any of the outcomes, but that's what really people that make those predictions do. What we'll do is get...
Well, that was interesting, though. We were just getting to the good part there because the Secretary...
Kind of curious that the video feed cut out right then. So Raffensperger mentioned that he had 4.7 million ballots and 2% left to count, and that it wouldn't change the outcome. That morning, Brad knew the totals for early voting, election day, absentee by mail, and provisional ballots. Those are the 4 ways that ballots are cast in Georgia. He knew there were 4.7 million ballots. He may not have known exactly what the results were going to be, but he knew the number of ballots. Here's a slide from the Wayback Machine. This is a wonderful tool where you can go back and you can pull screenshots from particular web pages that are just snapshots in time. So Raffensperger confirmed on the Today Show that 4.7 million ballots with about 2% were left to report. As of 9:51 a.m., there were in fact 4.7 million ballots that had been cast, and you can see that right there circled in red. What you're also seeing is that there were 158 out of 159 counties that had reported. That's under the green donut on the right. So 158 out of 159 counties. Guess which one hadn't completely reported yet? That's right, Fulton County. The number of precincts left, 2643 out of 2656. That means there were 13 precincts left to report. The Secretary of State's office, however, officially certified roughly 5 million votes. And by roughly, I'm talking about really, really closely. So you can see that number, 4,998,482 votes. That's roughly 5 million votes, even though he said there were 4.7 million. Now, how is that possible? And what you'll see on the right-hand side is that you have an orange donut with 2,656 of 2,656 precincts completed voting. This result is as of November 20th. That's on about the middle of the screen over on the left underneath the word results. So if Brad said that 4.7 million people had cast votes, and that was a record up from 4.1 million in 2016, that means that 600,000 more people had voted, or at least he thought they did, when in reality the total number ended up being 5 million votes. So 900,000 more people voted in the 2020 election in Georgia. And if you believe that, I have a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn. So somehow 300,000 votes, going from 4.7 million to 5 million votes, came in from 13 precincts, when the 13 largest precincts in Georgia in Fulton County have only 50,000 ballots. How on earth do you get 300,000 votes from 50,000 votes? So the question is, where did the 300,000 extra ballots come from? We have some ideas, but ultimately we won't know unless we can see the paper ballots. On to the next subject. Fulton County is missing 374,000 ballot images from the original November 3rd ballot count. So what happens when you scan a ballot and it goes into that thing that looks like a garbage can? Number one, a TIFF image is created. So that's a digital representation of the piece of paper that you put into the scanner. The second thing that happens is a results page is created and attached to that TIFF image, and it says who you voted for. The third and very critical thing is that something called a .sha file is created. That's an authentication file that has that was created by the NSA many years ago in order to authenticate digital images, to actually prove that that image has not been adulterated. When a ballot is scanned, the proper file output looks like this. Number one, the TIFF image is created. That is image number one up here. Number two, a results page is created, as I said before. And then number three is this thing called a SHA file. We're going to take a closer look at that on the next slide. Here's a screenshot of some images with some SHA files, and what you'll see is, if you look at the very top left, you see a scan date of 11/30/2020, 14:37, and what you have there is a SHA file that corresponds to the TIFF image below it, and you can tell that because on the far right hand side you see scanner number 5150, batch number 00029, image number 3. That's your SHA file. And then down below that is again scanner number 5150, batch 29, 00003 is the TIFF image, and so on. And you can see that throughout the page you've got, ballot image number 4, number 5, number 6, and so on. So Fulton County is missing 59,000 ballot images just from Election Day. And we know this for a fact because we received confirmation from the county attorney, Stephen Rosenberg, who said, nope, we don't have them. And when I put in an open records request down here on the bottom right, I know you can barely see it, it says that ballot imaging was not required for the November 2020 election, no responsive records. Now that's just total BS, because the contract between Dominion and Fulton County said that they would keep ballot images and create 256-bit encryption SHA files. So they were on the hook for all of this. We also know that Fulton County is missing over 315,000 ballot images from advance voting. So those are people that voted from the first part of October, or I guess second week of October, all the way through until October 30th. Those ballot images are missing too, and that's confirmed by the county attorney, Stephen Rosenberg. The next question here is, why are the ballot images missing? And what you'll see is that Chris Harvey, who was then the Georgia Elections Director, said in a personal email that the memory cards could be wiped. And apparently what was happening is the different counties were saying, oh, we're out of memory cards. These unbelievably inexpensive little things that slot, you put 2 of them into the back of each scanner in order to capture the results, and they ran out of them. I wonder how anybody could conceive that they wouldn't need enough memory cards in order to handle an election in Fulton County. So Fulton County is missing nearly all authentication files. You heard that, all. Out of all the 527 ballots that were cast, of the votes that were cast, Fulton County is missing 500,000 SHA files. And of everything we've ever asked for, they only gave us 16,000 stinking SHA files to authenticate all 527,000 ballots. When we went back and asked why they only have 16,000 SHA files out of the 148,000 ballot images for absentee by mail, the response through Dominic Alomo was, I need to know what SHA files he's referring and from who did he receive these files and when. That sounds a little bit like a panicked email to me. So you need to understand that, again, there were 3 counts in Georgia. There was the initial count, which didn't prove anything. There was a botched audit that we'll handle in just a moment, and then there was a final recount on December 9th. And even from the final recount, Fulton County is still missing 18,000 ballot images. That means that there are 18,000 more votes that were cast than ballot images to substantiate those votes. All in all, Fulton County cannot recreate or substantiate anything that they certified in their election results. The next topic is 315,000 votes that were certified with unsigned tabulator tapes. What you're looking at here is an excerpt from an official complaint filed with the state election board, and what we're saying is that through our many open records requests, Fulton County has provided tabulator tapes like the ones I'll show you in just a moment that affect over 315,000 votes, and they're blank. Nobody signed these things. Here are 5 tabulator tapes. I recognize that they're a little bit blurry here, but I'm happy to send you brand new, fabulous copies of these things. The most important thing to take away from this particular slide is that there's no signatures. There's no names and no signatures, because these tabulator tapes were printed out by one person who did not want to sign anything. Every time at the end of an election, tabulator tapes are printed out and you have 3 witnesses that were there at the poll, and they sign the tape that says that they saw the tape printed out, and they are witnesses to that document being created. In the case of Fulton County, there are votes for 315,000 votes that were certified with these unsigned tabulator tapes. To take it a step further, we even have unsigned tabulator tapes that had duplicated serial numbers, meaning that when a tape was printed out, it had the same serial number as another machine. Now that's supposed to be impossible, but Rick Barron said, oh, we had problems and we had to print them all out, using just a few machines, which again is BS, because they had plenty of machines in order to handle the election. They even had I think close to 300 that were sitting in storage. So they can't say we didn't have enough machines to handle the election. These are the rules for the tabulator tapes. And basically what it tells you is that the election superintendent or the tabulating center personnel must verify that there are no discrepancies on the tapes. The election superintendent or tabulating center personnel shall cause each ballot scanner to print a minimum of 3 tapes showing that the vote totals cast on that ballot scanner are true and correct. The 3 witnesses shall sign each of the tapes, and again, I'm going to show you some more that don't have signatures on them, or they shall write on the tapes the reason why they will not sign them. In the case of Fulton County, we have tapes that don't have any signatures on them. Here's an example of a tabulator tape that was printed out that had a duplicate serial number. Duplicate serial numbers are supposed to never ever occur. Here's an unsigned tabulator tape that shows that the poll was opened 14 days late, and look at that, it also has a duplicate serial number for the closeout. Again, supposedly an impossibility. This poll was closed 2 hours late at 1:56 a.m. and it was closed on a duplicate serial number tabulator. which means that in all likelihood, somebody was printing out these tapes at a central warehouse location, probably all by himself. The next area we're going to take a look at is the botched audit. So the document you're looking at above, or this says a risk limiting audit report, this is from the Secretary of State's site. It says from November 11th to November 19th, county election officials in Georgia conducted a statewide risk limiting audit of the presidential contest from the November 2020 general election. It says Georgia's original machine count resulted in a margin of 0.3% between candidates Joe Biden and Donald Trump, requiring a full manual count of just over 5 million ballots to complete an efficient risk limiting audit. Now, that's word salad because it is word salad. Philip Stark, take a look at the top left here. Philip Stark is a University of California, Berkeley statistics professor, widely recognized as the creator of the risk limiting audit. And he called Georgia's decision to do whatever audit this was, he called it a Franken count in an email. Harry Hursty said the whole thing was originally called a risk limiting audit, then a hand recount, then an audit. I don't know what it is. I don't think anyone else knows either. We're going to show you some evidence here in just a moment that involves a guy named Carter Jones. He was a consultant who worked for Fulton County to document the election processes. His job was to tell Fulton County what they did right, what they did wrong, what they could improve, and what they did terrible. He provided an executive summary report, I think that was about 12 to 14 pages long, to the Fulton County Board of Elections. But he also privately created a 29-page document that was his unabridged notes that we happened to find, and they look like they've been pretty well scrubbed from the internet now. The Secretary of State's risk limiting audit spreadsheet was utterly riddled with errors. I notified him on 9 different occasions of what was going on, and he never paid attention, never called me back, until one day he called me back on my cell phone, had no idea who I was, and he asked me for a campaign contribution. I think he's probably a wonderfully well adept engineer, but when it comes to doing his job as Secretary of State, I think he's woefully inadequate. There's a link down here at the bottom that gives it's a video link that shows my full explanation of what happened in the audit. We're going to cover just a little bit of that here in order to save time. The bottom line was that there are so many errors in the risk limiting audit that it can't be called an audit at all. The folder that I created shows just a portion of what was found in Fulton County, but there's so much more. We showed 6,617 duplicate count of ballots, with 5,300 too many to Biden and 1,215 too many to Trump. The result was a net 4,086 too many to Biden, and that is just in one county on just the absentee by mail ballots, which was a population of 148,000 ballots out of 527,000. A very small sample size relative to the entire state. This is a screenshot of the ballot data that we received from the Secretary of State's office, and what you can see is on the red and the right hand side we got 148,000 ballot images out of 527,000 total votes that were cast. So we only received the absentee by mail ballots that we were able to compare against the risk limiting audit results. There's some interesting things in Carter Jones' report. He showed that there were approximately 126,000 absentee by mail ballots to scan, not the 148,000 that I showed you on the previous screen. So you can see in his notes here, I underlined it in red, on November 3rd at 6:32 p.m., he's basically saying that 86,191 ballots have been scanned. They got 40,000 more to go. Now, by my 5th grade math, when I add those two together, I get 126,191. But somehow we have about 22,000 more ballot images than can be ascertained from the information from Carter Jones. Here's a screenshot from this miserable risk limiting audit that was not accurate at all. So in the blue column, this is information that was given to us by the Secretary of State's office. On the right-hand side, under the green columns, these are the actual ballot image totals that we counted by computer and then by hand in order to figure out what were the totals that in each one of these batches. Midway down on the left-hand side, you'll see jurisdiction name was Fulton County, and then you'll see a batch name. And in the case of the very first one, absentee scanner 3, batch 172, came from tabulator 5162, and the batch number is 172. In that particular batch, there were 34 for Trump, 62 for Biden, 1 for Jorgensen. That's under the blue. Under the green on the right-hand side, you'll see that we have a match. We have 34 for Trump, 62 for Biden, and 1 for Jorgensen. That's one of the rare matches. All the other ones where you see red fail on here shows that there were multiple times that the ballots were counted incorrectly. In this case, we have a triple counted 96 for Biden, or 96 for Trump, 392 for Biden, that was counted 3 times, and it was triple counted. This is a close-up of the data that I just shared with you with the 96 for Trump, 392 for Biden. What you can see is at the top of the screen in the yellow, those are the audit board batch sheets where somebody wrote these things down, that this is what they counted. On the far left, you'll see batch number 175. They came up with 96, 392, and 3. And then somehow in the center, batch number 176 has the same numbers. And on the far right-hand side, you'll see batch number 177 has the exact same numbers again. And these things were all entered individually as if they were separate batches on their own. So how Gabriel Sterling can tell you that nothing was counted twice is utter nonsense. We found so many errors that 60% of the batches that were counted by hand were counted incorrectly. That doesn't mean that it was off by 60%. It means that 60% of the batches did not match what the total ballot count was for the candidates. The work that you just saw on the previous slide was shown at a press conference with Garland Favorito. It was picked up by Steve Bannon and then shown, I think, the same night on Tucker Carlson's show. And a couple weeks later, maybe a week or so later, I got a telephone call from Mr. Joe Rossi of Perry, Georgia, who's a retired Pepsi-Cola executive. He called me up and he said, where was the source of your information? And I told him it was the Secretary of State's office. How did you do the calculations? I shared that with him. He was going to do his own calculations. To my surprise, Joe Rossi called me back about a week and a half later, and he said he found exactly the same thing that I found. He, in fact, even found a couple more errors. He then created a letter that he wrote to Governor Kemp, and Governor Kemp's office took a look at what Rossi had put together, and they verified. So my work was vetted and proven right by Rossi, and then Rossi's was proved right by Governor Kemp's office. The previous page showed you a letter from Governor Kemp to the State Election Board. This page is page 1 of, I think, maybe 44 pages that were created by Governor Kemp's office that showed all of the inconsistencies in the risk limiting audit. The tiny URL link on the left-hand side, if you just type in tinyurl.com/Kemp exhibits, you'll be able to see everything that's in that report. Next, we move on to recount problems and errors in Fulton County. The official recount per the Secretary of State's office gave us the following numbers. On the far right-hand side, 527,925 ballots were cast. The total number of registered voters was 806,000, but the most important number is the 527,925 ballots that were cast. And why is that important? Because on the midway down the page on the left, you'll see the purple MC2 ballot images. That refers to machine count 2. That's the recount that happened in December. And the box that's highlighted halfway down the page in the middle that shows 510,201. That's the total number of ballot images that we received from Fulton County. After hounding and pestering them for everything they had, they still came up 17,724 missing ballot images. Fulton County also counted 3,125 ballot images twice. Gabriel Sterling said no ballots were counted twice. Well, hell, we know that they were counted twice in the risk limiting audit, if you can call it that, and they were counted twice in the final recount. And again, this is just one county. So there's a fabulous tool that's out there that you can go to called www.see4yourself.us.gov. 8080, where a brilliant person put together this data that showed across the entire state. You can click on each one of the counties that's hyperlinked in blue. You can look at the ballots. You can look at the numbers of the ballots that were found that were duplicated. And again, his work shows that in Fulton County, 3,183 were duplicate counted. In his case, he says some were duplicate counted. The numbers are just absolutely astonishing because there are mistakes throughout the state. Next, we're going to move on to the election day lie. Fulton County reported that 59,000 people voted on election day. We believe the real number is around 22,000. So that means about 37,000 votes were inserted. Here's how we know. The first thing we'll take a look at is the total number of votes that were certified. So Fulton County certified 59,143 election day votes. That's coming directly from the source at the Secretary of State's office. All right, so we're back to Carter Jones. So again, Carter Jones is a consultant with Seven Hill Strategies. His job was to help Fulton County figure out what they did right, what they did wrong, and what they could improve. So on page 16 of his 29-page unredacted notes, we can see that Fulton County had 21,843 votes with 655 provisionals. What's interesting is the red boxes. Look at the date and timestamp. Thursday, November 5th, 12:49 a.m. This is a day and a half after the election is over. It's a screenshot right there. And you can also see that there are 157 polls that are open and only 19 that are closed. So 59,000 ballots cast, but Carter Jones shows 21,843. It's really interesting. Fulton County held a special meeting at 6:30 p.m. on election night where an incompatible number of votes was noted on the official record. Here is where you'll hear Dwight Brower, who's a former employee with the Elections Division, talk about he's saying it has been a fairly uneventful election day, and as of about 5 o'clock, about 14,000 people have cast ballots. Take a listen.
Persons to actually cast a ballot, and then we had about 598 provisional ballots cast. Persons to actually cast a ballot, and then we had about 598 provisional ballots cast.
So as of 5 p.m., the 14,152 vote number, it sounds kind of low.
Questions
but listen,
from
it's
my colleagues
or it's
of
confirmed
either
by Dr.
Mr.
Ruth. Take a
Jones
listen.
or Mr. Brower. Dr. Ruth.
Yes, Mr. Brower, can you give us that number again, the 14,000 number? Yes, Mr. Brower, can you give us that number again, the 14,000
we
number?
had about 14,152 people to cast ballots on the November 3rd general election, and 598 people had actually submitted or cast a provisional ballot.
All right, so the number 14,152 was stated and confirmed.
Yeah, let me.
And here it's going to be reconfirmed.
Mr.
Yeah,
Wade.
let me make sure we enter. What you're saying is, up until about this time, we've only had 14,000 votes cast on. I'm missing the point here. What was it kind of not coming through clear on my side? I don't think. Not coming through clear on my side.
As of 5 p.m. this evening, November 3rd, we've had 14,152 ballots cast, in-person ballots cast on election day, and 598 provisional ballots cast.
So how do you like that? Stated, confirmed, reconfirmed. So the math just doesn't add up. If Fulton County said or reported that 59,000 people voted on election day, but Ralph Jones and Dwight Brower confirmed 3 times that only 14,000 people had voted as of 5 p.m., that means that about 45,000 people rushed to the polls in the last 2 hours of voting. Does that make any sense? If you're from Georgia, no, it doesn't. You just heard Raffensperger in his video a couple moments ago say that lines were like 2 minutes long, statewide. There were no lines. There was nobody rushing to the polls. There were no crowds. In fact, the supporter report by Raisha Habersham showed the typical long lines you see at polls were non-existent. This one's particularly funny. 3:30 p.m. outside the Central Park Recreation Center in Old Fourth Ward. Lizzo's Good as Hell blares from a nearby church, and you can hear the rustling of leaves on the ground. It's so crowded. You can hear the rustling of leaves on the ground. Normally you'd hear the complaint of a resident about the long lines swarming outside the building, but all there was to see were a couple of people entering to cast ballots and then leaving. It was sedate. There was nothing going on. The final part of this report says, in the box, Dwight Brower did immediately have early voting totals through October 30th, the last day of early voting. But he said that more than 14,000 in-person ballots were cast on Tuesday, a relatively low number given the number of precincts. Fulton County Board of Elections board member Fernetta Nurden said that Dwight Brower said nearly 600 provisional ballots had been cast. The low election day turnout, combined with the ballot processing delays, also troubled Fulton County Election Board member Mark Wingate. So let's dive into the numbers. 59,143 or 21,843, which is it? Fulton County provided us with the election day voter history file that contains some key information, the check-in times for voters. So here's the election day list that Fulton County provided. It was 1,457 pages long. This is page 1. This is page number 1,457 that showed the 59,186 voters. So if the polls were not crowded, but 45,000 people rushed to the polls between 5 and 7 p.m., then we should see about 45,000 people in the voter history file voting between 5 and 7 p.m. But watch what happens. When the data is placed in a spreadsheet and sorted simply by check-in time, we find two very interesting data points. Voter number 14,152 checked in and voted at 8:36 a.m. Think about that. Does that make any sense? Do you think that the state-of-the-art system was giving Dwight Brower and Ralph Jones information that was 10 hours old? There's no way. Here's the actual number of people who voted from 5 p.m. until 7:30 p.m. with the close of polls. 6,931. If I take the 6,931 that I just showed you that voted between 5:30 between 5 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. and add to that the 14,152 that Dwight Brower said had voted as of 5 p.m. and then add to that the total 655 provisional ballots, that gives me a total of 21,738, which is within 105 votes of the number that is on Carter Jones' screenshot. Do you believe in coincidences? I don't. Here's another part of the election day lie. The number of people that was voting per hour is remarkably consistent, don't you think? Last time I checked, people vote in the morning, at lunch, and after work, not in a uniform time distribution. In this case, we show that roughly 11,000 people voted between 7 and 8 p.m. and then somehow 5,000 people, roughly 5,000 people per hour for the next 4 hours, and then 4,000 people per hour for the next 6 hours. It's as if people were standing at a deli counter and taking tickets in order to vote in an orderly fashion. It doesn't add up and it doesn't make logical sense. Our team does not believe that 59,000 people voted on Election Day in Fulton County. Carter Jones' screenshot shows that roughly 22,000 people voted, and that seems to be very accurate according to all the data that we're looking at and the objective facts. But we cannot possibly know anything without seeing the paper ballots. On to the next subject. Vote counts do not match on a precinct level. So the ballot images speak for themselves. Only absentee by mail and provisional ballot images were released for the first count in November for the November 3rd, 2020 election. There's a huge discrepancy in the Fulton County ballot images when you narrow the scope down to specific precincts. Then if you break those ballots down into further groups and isolate the top 3 races on the ballot, it allows you to directly compare those results to what should be the same and constant to the recount. So the numbers should match between November 3rd initial count and December 9th recount, between president and the next two Senate people. The problem is that the ballots somehow change. In this case, we're breaking down precinct 01G. What we see is that there are 9 ballots for Biden, Ossoff, and Warnock, 2 for Biden, a non-vote for Ossoff, and then 1 for Warnock. 1 ballot for Biden, Hazel, James. 1 ballot for Biden, Ossoff, and blank. 1 ballot for Biden, Ossoff, and Winfield. In the first red box, one vote for Trump, Hazel, and a write-in, and then 1 vote for Trump, Perdue, and Collins. What happens in this particular batch in this particular precinct batch from the initial count to the recount is that we see that 2 ballots are removed from Biden, Ossoff, and Warnock. 1 ballot each is removed from the bottom layer down there, resulting in 5 total ballots removed. Then we show in the recount that 3 images were inserted. So we have the resulting total is 7 for Biden, Ossoff, Warnock, 2 for Biden, blank, Warnock, 1 for Biden, Hazel, James, 1 for Biden, Ossoff, blank, and then the 3 inserts down below. Here's what the totals look like. The gray shows what was trashed and removed. The red blocks show what was added and inventory was created. So essentially 8 out of the 16 ballots in the count are different. That's a 50% difference in the accuracy. Let's look at what happened in other precincts. Vickery Mill Elementary School on the top left had 19 out of 35 ballots that were changed. Peachtree Christian Church showed 5 out of 12 that were changed. Thomasville Rec Center showed 12 out of 13 that were changed. Central Park Rec Center on Merritt's Avenue showed 17 out of 50 ballots were changed. Historic Academy of Medicine showed 19 out of 52, and Crabapple Middle School showed 10 out of 46 ballots were changed from the initial vote count to the recount. Things just do not add up and match. On to the next subject. For the November 3rd recount, statewide, Georgia is still missing over 500,000 ballot images, meaning that there are 500,000, 500,000 votes that were counted statewide that don't have ballot images to support the vote count. Again, this just shows you that nothing was verified and Georgia should not have been certified. The numbers are so far off that it's impossible to tell what the real count was without pulling out the original paper ballots on a county by county basis. The next topic is logic and accuracy testing. Every time before an election, machines are rolled out. They need to be tested in advance to make sure that the software is proper and secure and that it's the right version. And it's supposed to be completed 2 weeks before early voting starts. So in this case, logic and accuracy testing at the latest should have been completed on October 5th. Instead, it was not finished or completed until October 31st, which was coincidentally after early voting had ended. The red block on the far right-hand side shows each one of the precincts, and when logic and accuracy testing was completed. As you can see, it was well after ballots had been cast. So there's no way to tell if the ballots that were cast in those precincts or any of the precincts in Fulton County actually matched up the way that they should have. The recent movie, 2000 Mules, highlighted ballot traffickers in different states and also in Georgia. This one was not in the movie, but I think it should have been. So this lady has a stack of ballots. Looks like she's holding a couple loaves of bread. When I contacted the Secretary of State's investigators, the investigator told me, oh, this lady has cleared, and I think she only had about 5 ballots in her hand, which is highly unusual, number one, worthy of investigation, but total BS, because when you watch the video, and if you go to tinyurl.com/30-40 ballots, you'll see the full video. It's amazing how many ballots this woman manages to jam into the box. Here's another possible ballot trafficker, and keep in mind I have to use the word possible because I've been told I could be sued if I call these people out. You can't even tell who they are, but that's what I've been told. So this guy is what I would call what looks like to be a possible proud ballot harvester holding out somewhere between 10 and 14 ballots, and he's taken a picture of them. This individual looks interesting because he visited the same ballot box on October 15th and October 17th. It looks like the same person to me. I could be wrong, but in the video that I posted online, he has the same shoes in both videos. The next topic here is your vote can be changed or it can be ignored. In this case, this is a wonderful video. If you go to YouTube and type in unclear ballot, that's 2 words, unclear ballot, and then CART, K-A-R-T, you'll pull up this video. And these 2 University of Michigan students that studied under Alex Halderman were able to create a little software program that wrapped around the scanning devices and was able to change ballot markings that you had filled in with a pencil or an X mark or filled in the oval. It can change your vote in 20 milliseconds on the Dominion system. The video is about 28 minutes long. I'm not going to play it on here because you can look at it again at YouTube. You can type in this jumbled mess down here, or again you can type in on YouTube, search for unclear ballot space CART, K-A-R-T, and you'll pull up this video. They do a brilliant job showing you exactly how the machines can be defeated, and they even show a workaround in order to help voters who don't want to have their ballot stolen. Here's an example of how your ballot can be ignored. So Doug Logan, who's formerly of Cyber Ninjas, shared a problem that happened in Williamson, Tennessee that involved a QR code signature mismatch coding error. So a Dominion software error was found in the scanner slog files in Williamson County, and the issue that was observed was such that a single ballot could be misread, categorized as a provisional ballot, and then all subsequent ballots that came in after it would not be counted, and even the odometer on the machine would not count the ballots coming through the system. The result was that an inaccurate vote count that could only be reconciled by counting physical ballots. So imagine if you have a machine where you're feeding in 100 ballots. On number 51, it says that that ballot is a provisional, and then the next 49 ballots that go through are not read at all, and the machine simply says 51 ballots were cast, not 100. The only way to catch that is to count the ballots by hand. The United States Election Assistance Commission wrote up a very brief, and let me emphasize brief, 4-page report describing the issue, but they nor Dominion knew what caused the issue. The brevity of the report seems to indicate there was no problem of concern. What you can tell though here is that closed poll reports from 7 of the 18 ICP means image cast precinct tabulators that were used during election did not match the number of ballots scanned. Now this is important because ICP means ballot scanners at the precinct level. So that's when you go in and vote and you put your ballot into the machine and it drops in a little garbage can. And in this case, for some people, it literally was a garbage can. So subsequent tabulation of the jurisdiction's ICC, that's ImageCast Central count scanners, provided the correct tally. Well, that doesn't really help anything, because when you're voting in your precinct, the precinct scanner is counting up your ballots. ICC scanners are used to count absentee by mail. That's why you've got two different scanners. One is used the precinct, another one is used at the central office. So that innocuous, not to worry about the QR code signature mismatch that the Election Assistance Commission didn't bother to put out a note to all the counties out there that said, hey, you need to take notice and see if you got this in your system. Well, fortunately, we put out slog file requests with open records requests throughout the entire state of Georgia. Some counties got back to us with full records. Most of them did not. Most of them, some of them would not comply. Some of them only gave us truncated records, but some counties gave us a lot. And here we have examples of Gwinnett County has got the QR code signature mismatch error that happened in the primary in 2020, and that affected people who were running in primaries. And then here's Candler County, Georgia, that has a QR code signature mismatch, and you can see that error occurred on the November 2020 election. So the experts agree. Even election audit expert Philip Stark, who's the associate dean, University of California, Berkeley, wrote that even if Fulton County did not rely on ballot marking devices for virtually all in-person voters, the lack of basic accounting controls makes it impossible to determine who really won an election contest. Even by hand counting the votes, the record of the vote could easily be incomplete and adulterated. This remains true even if ballot marking devices could be relied upon to print voter selections accurately. He said, I have no reason to believe that problems of the kinds described above are limited to Fulton County, but because of time constraints, I have not yet investigated other counties. I might examine data from other Georgia counties before trial, including comparing the tabulations based on images cast and other RLA work papers and reported results. And it's a total mess. One of our staunchest critics, and probably someone you might have heard from, that's called us crazy, has actually come back and said, well, counting 3 times is not proof of counting anything when the method of counting is not legitimate. How can triple counting be okay? She even says, I spent over 1,000 hours personally with the data, and I'm like, who knows? At the very bottom, what is the basis for your confidence that in a Biden win? I wish it, but I'm not confident. So this woman holds herself out as someone who is nonpartisan, and she's all about election integrity, and it sure looks like maybe she's not. In the Curling versus Raffensperger case, where Marilyn Marks is involved, Judge Amy Totenberg said, the risks are neither hypothetical nor remote under the current circumstances, that there are serious problems and vulnerabilities. And to this day, there is a report that is under seal because it is too dangerous for regular people to see, because the bad guys might be able to use the information. That doesn't make any sense, because the bad guys probably already have the information. Wouldn't it be wonderful if the good guys had the information so they could go fix the problem in the holes? But no, it's blocked and it's sealed, and that document has been stuck since good grief, I think since 2019. Hey, look at this. Purdue and Trump actually won. So this is another report from the Wayback Machine that shows that on Wednesday, November 4th, at 10:54 p.m., plenty of time to count all the damn ballots. Look at this underneath the green donut. Counties complete, 159 out of 159. Precincts complete, all of them, 2656 out of 2656. And look at there, Donald Trump won with 49.7 versus Biden with 49.06, and David Perdue had 2.4 million votes to John Ossoff's 2.3 million votes. So in both cases, Trump and Perdue won according to the information that was provided by the Secretary of State. So Georgia's 2020 election results are totally unverifiable. When Kelly Loeffler went to Congress and voted on whether or not to accept or reject Georgia's, or object to Georgia's electoral college votes, she should have dissented. She absolutely should have dissented, but she didn't. Perdue said, this isn't hard, this isn't partisan, this is American. We believe when there are failures, they need to be called out, even when it's in your own party. The Secretary of State has failed to deliver honest and transparent elections. He has failed the people of Georgia, and he should step down immediately. And honestly, I think that goes for Brian Kemp as well, too, because he's the one that selected this damn system to begin with. Thank you for watching this video. These are some of our sources. We have additional sources, additional information. I tried to keep this content down to under an hour, and we're coming in at right around 57 minutes. If you have questions, you can certainly call me in Georgia. 678-894-0696 is my office number, or you can email me at dcross108@protonmail.com. Thank you for your attention.